Hey everyone, I'm Mark and welcome to another GameCast review. Today I'll be reviewing Splatoon 2, now available for the Nintendo Switch. Let's start things off by talking about gameplay. Splatoon 2, much like the original game, is a simple third-person shooter that uses ink-based weaponry instead of actual firearms. The unique twist is that all of your weapons leave a trail of ink in their wake. You can then morph into a squid and travel through this ink, increasing your movement speed and healing you at the same time. The original game was great, but was starved for content at launch. Splatoon 2 is pretty much the first game with all of its updates already included, plus a few more bells and whistles. The single-player campaign starts out in a fairly similar fashion to the first game, but quickly picks up as it introduces the player to new weapons and gameplay concepts. Each stage has a similar structure and goal, hitting a mix between Super Mario Galaxy and Ratchet & Clank. There are multiple collectibles hidden in each stage, and replaying old stages is encouraged as once a new weapon is unlocked, it can be used in previous areas. The new Splat dualies are a highlight as they speed up the action considerably and give a new layer to gunplay. The new boss battles are twists on older concepts, and if nothing else they are visual spectacles. Unfortunately, some of the new mechanics are exclusive to the campaign, which is a bit annoying. The original Splatoon's multiplayer concept was ridiculous, a third-person shooter where your goal isn't to rack up the most kills. Instead, your goal was to cover the most area with ink. It didn't sound like it would work, and I was very skeptical, especially since it was a new Nintendo IP. But much like most experimental concepts from Nintendo, it just works. I had a blast with the original, and the same is true for its sequel. The majority of your time will most likely be spent in Turf War, a 4v4 mode where each team aims to cover the most area in their team's ink. It's a great mode that is vastly improved with communication between teammates. Unfortunately, Splatoon 2 is very user-unfriendly in this department. There is no inbuilt voice chat option, and the small commands you can call out are far too general. You are also unable to change your loadout between matches and must exit back to the main matchmaking screen. This leads to many battles being fought with an awkward team composition. It's here that the game stumbles, as in all multiplayer modes, communication and coordination is often the key to victory. Most matches then become a trial and guesswork as you choose a direction and hope your team is competent. This is especially true in the ranked battle modes, which play on traditional Capture the Flag and King of the Hill modes. New to Splatoon 2 is Salmon Run. This is a co-op horde-style mode that tasks players with surviving waves of increasingly difficult salmon-esque monsters. Each round you cycle to a new weapon, and consecutive play brings new challenges, like boss swarms, shrinking arenas, and drastic changes in the weather. It's another mode that could really use better communication options, as some bosses require coordination between two or more players. It's also a timed event, which is strange. Much like the other modes, Salmon Run will swap its map, weapons, and rewards at specific intervals. However, unlike the other modes, Salmon Run is only available on certain days, which is a shame as it's a lot of fun and gave a good break from the rest of the content. Next up, let's talk about the story. Splatoon 2 takes place sometime after the events of the first game. The Great Zapfish has gone missing once again, and it's up to you to find out what's going on. Your character is silent, so it's up to your new mentor Mari, one of the pop idol squid sisters from the first game, to guide you through the narrative. The game doesn't take itself too seriously, even directly referencing that the goal of the game is the same as the first. The dialogue is loaded with puns, but sometimes it's hard to focus as a few chunks of narrative and guidance will occur during gameplay. The new idols that replaced Callie and Mari, Pearl and Mariner, don't play any real role in the story, but they are the faces that greet you each time you boot up the game. They carry more varied personalities and designs than their predecessors, and if the first test Splatfest was any indication, then one idol is definitely more popular than the other. Next up, let's talk about presentation. Splatoon 2 isn't the prettiest game out there, but it's loaded with style. Characters, weapons, and environments are all brimming with personality, and each little detail has some small story to tell. Each weapon and piece of clothing has been lovingly detailed, and very rarely would you find another player wearing the exact same clothes. The sheen and splash effects of your ink are great, however there's usually very little time to admire it in the heat of combat. The single-player stages are complex, and the second half of the game really kicks it up a notch. The multiplayer maps have a beautiful symmetry to them, and they're great playgrounds to mess around in. The main multiplayer hub, Inkopolis, is well realised and filled with small details. The different shopkeepers each have a fun quirk and charming design. There are user-generated posts used as graffiti and scattered throughout multiplayer matches. The user posts are by far the highlight of the hub, as they range from gameplay tips, fun memes, beautiful fan art, and loads of anime references. The sound effects and music are just as good as the original, with some really satisfying splat and splashing sounds. The slightly more hip-hop soundtrack really suits the new entry and idol pair, but I do miss Kali and Mari from time to time. Splatoon 2 is great fun, and the Switch is the perfect home for it. It always felt like a pick up and play sort of game, and now it is. I grinded out the first 10 levels in multiplayer before I even realised how long I had been playing, and I still wanted more. Each time I start up the game, I'm treated to a happy and enthusiastic community. I only wish I could interact better during an actual match. At times, Splatoon 2 feels like a sequel, and at others, it's more like an expansion or definitive edition. It's a vast improvement over the first game, and I'm sure it'll have a similar longevity. Its matchmaking could still use some work, and its communication options need a complete overhaul. But it isn't exactly the most competitive of shooters, and even my losses were fun. If you own a Switch, then Splatoon 2 is definitely a must-buy from me. Stay tuned to GameCast for more great gaming content. You can also find Gamecasts and my social media links in the description below. Until next time, don't get cooked, stay off the hook.